So hi everybody, I'm Rasheed, Ogunlaru, coach, speaker and author, and welcome back to Compassion Check-In. And today it's it's noon, Wednesdays that we meet, the heart of every week, or not every week, but whenever we can meet. Today's topic is about legacy. And I thought legacy might be quite interesting generally as a topic, but it's quite interesting that this month, October, is known for two things. It's Black History Month, it's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so they're kind of topics that often make people think about legacy, life and legacy, right? But legacy might mean many different things to different people. So it's quite an interesting topic. I'm just going to get my friends here just to say just a wave and maybe say a hello. Frank Monroe, do you want to say a wave and say a quick hello?
Hello, my one fan.
Iris, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hello, I'm here with two birds and a dog, so it might not run that smoothly from that end.
Wonderful. Lee? Oh, you're on mute, Lee.
Hi, I'm here from Barcelona.
Wonderful. And Mia?
I'm here with my cat who's doing koga, I call it. That's what he does, yoga. He does yoga on the windowsill in the bathroom. So I have to open the window first thing in the morning and let him out so he can stretch.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Robin, do you want to put your voice into the room and just say a quick hello?
Good morning or good afternoon, guys. I'm here, but my camera is not here, but I can assure you my smile is going up to my ears because I'm here with all these wonderful people. So
excellent. Well, it's wonderful. Well, and our topic today is legacy, which is interesting. And I'm just looking around at this wonderful call, and first of all, looking at the diversity that we've got here, the rich diversity of our backgrounds, who we are, where we live in the world, where we travel to in the world. And the first thing I want to just say to kick off with legacy is that when I was thinking about this topic, and I can't remember who'd suggested it, I think it may have even popped into my mind. We often think about what's left, isn't it? But I was also then thinking about, well, what about the things from legacy, the stuff that first of all we inherit? Because there's that kind of legacy. And if you think about it, there are some things, isn't it, that are part of that we emerge with, that's part of our legacy in our DNA. The skin coloring, the gender, the where in the world we're from, and so on. So this legacy thing isn't just about the kind of end game and so on. It is there from the start. I wonder if anyone wants to kick us off with this word legacy. And Lee, I can see a lovely smile there. So I'm tempted to just come to you first. I'd love to know what the word even means to you, or what it suggests to you, if you've got any first thoughts about this.
Well, I really wanted to join this today with legacy because I think it's just such a potent word with the courses that with the retreats that we organized together, Rasheed. You've called it life, leadership, and legacy. And I think coming from a country like South Africa and having such a complex history and legacy, I think it for me, legacy personally means something about it's almost the word promise comes to mind of a promise of what you can share with the world, and that there's hope, and that there's a kind of sustenance for people who follow after you. And Debbie, our dear friend, posted something today about a tree that leaves the shade afterwards. You might not see the tree come to fruition, but that there's that kind of feeling of whatever you're doing now, you might never see the results of it, but just leaving that behind for future generations. But you're doing that right now. It's not something that you're planning for the future. The legacy is alive right now. You are that love or compassion or whatever in action that you're trying to accomplish, or whatever kind of message you're leaving. But your life itself is its legacy right now.
I like that. And Mia, I want to turn to you next, Mia Morris, OBE, because I suspect that a lot of the OBE was about your contribution to education, and you've founded the Black History Month website here in the United Kingdom, and you've done a lot over many, many, many years. And so I'd imagine the word legacy is a word that is very, very dear to your heart. I'd love to hear your thoughts on legacy.
Okay, it's in the here and now, isn't it? It's part of your past, your present, and your future. And a lot of it is about recognizing where you can make a contribution. recognizing where you could make a difference, which is the blessing of a legacy.
And that's lovely, because there's that lovely link with what you've said there and what Lee was saying before, you know, the past, the present, and so on, and where you can make that kind of contribution. Frank, always polite, your virtual hand is up, so let's turn to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something into the mix, because I had a similar conversation a few weeks ago about legacy. And I've always tended to look at it, if you like, from a two-dimensional point of view. But a third dimension was thrown into the mix. And that dimension was, using my son as an example, if he was to pose the question about legacy, what have I handed down? What have I left to him? His observation would be very different from what I think I'm doing. So it very much depends on the perspective that you're approaching it very much depends on the perspective that you're approaching legacy.
It's interesting. I like what you're saying there, Frank. I'm just sitting with what you're saying. So our own perspective of what it is that I'm here, I'm doing, what I'm contributing.
Exactly.
It might be very, very different to the recipient's perspective. And
exactly.
It's interesting for anybody who might be a parent or what have you. This is very interesting. And let's say a warm welcome to Iris G. We'll just give a lovely wave to Iris G. Meanwhile, I'm keen to turn to Iris K. Anything you're wanting to add? And I'm still just struck by what Frank was saying, that thing about our own perspective on that, because I think one thing that does jump out to me is that, and it builds on, I guess, maybe what Lee and Mia were saying, maybe I need to be even more mindful about what I'm doing in the here and now.
Yeah.
Because how am I doing it? Am I doing that mindfully? Because I might think, yeah, I'm doing this for everybody. But actually I might be completely selfish and there might be no everybody in it. So I think there's something sobering and in what you were saying. Iris K, over to you.
I think it's an incredibly humbling subject, actually. And, you know, it's maybe a good thing that we don't know what impact we have sometimes. So I know that in my career, I always made a point to give young people an opportunity who wanted to get into marketing and fundraising. And I've invested a lot of time and energy in developing talents. So there might be an element of legacy there. And I volunteered in prison for 10 years and was just tidying up through some stuff, and I found a really lovely letter that somebody had sent me from that time, and he made a stitched picture and things like that. So I think that there are opportunities in life where you can be a blessing or share something that has an impact. But to me, one story for me is quite significant. So when I lived in Africa, and I was in Zimbabwe, we were in a game reserve, and the neighbors we had, they were Americans, and they wanted to see how the black people live, and they took. We came along, and they took us to a place with a lot of huts and shared cooking spaces, and I was just absolutely horrified how people were living there, and the woman who was cleaning our place lived in one of those houses and showed us their room. And I was looking around at this massive bed where the whole family slept, a really shabby blanket. There were no wallpapers, and they had just newspapers, pasted on the walls and things like that. But what really moved me was I had put some food aside, and I found that on a little shelf there. So obviously they didn't even have a fridge or something like that. And, and that, in addition to talking to some of the young people, and we saw the children walk for miles to get to school, and it meant so much for them to have education. And then there wasn't anything to go once they finished primary school. So those two things, and it was just random encounters where people give you an insight into their life and share something. But to me, particularly the woman the lady who was cleaning our place, made me want to work for charity in development. You know, there was just something like somebody turning a switch after that, you know, and I was working for Mercedes at the time, and I thought, no, when I go back to England, I will change my career, and I want to work for charities who help these people to improve their lives.
It's very interesting.
And this woman, she would never know that she was instrumental in turning that switch.
Oh, that's so lovely. I'm so glad that you wrapped that story up. Isn't that beautiful that, you know, this particular lady was inspired what you did. So that's that legacy. It's very interesting, that point. A friend of mine, in fact, my downstairs neighbor often used to say, and we were talking about it in creative circles, because many people know part of my background was a singer and performer, and my neighbor's background is as a photographer. And we were talking about various things, and he would often say, you know what, you won't always know the impact you have, and people will kind of be, many people are looking at what you do, more people than you know. And there's something about that bit which is very interesting with legacy, you know, that sometimes we've just got no idea, you know, we just have no idea of that impact that we're having. There's something profound about that as well. Let's bring in at that moment Iris G. And actually, Iris K, just before we move on to Iris G, I'm also struck by, it's interesting in the charity world, the word legacy is often used, isn't it? Leaving a legacy. That's an interesting thing. Maybe we'll come back to that. Iris G, legacy is, it's a middle-sized word to the interpreter, but it's a huge word. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this word, isn't it? It's quite a, this is quite a, I must use the word heavy word. Oh, you're just on mute, yes.
Mute, yeah. Yes, actually, I was thinking about legacy before this, and I agree with you that it is a heavy word. And the thing that actually I thought it was, there are two people that passed through my life that left a legacy that if I could, I would love to leave that sort of legacy. This is because these two people, they're completely different people. They actually managed to leave the same impression on people behind. Both of them passed away. One was my father, and the other one was my first teacher, interpreting teacher in the UK. You know, my father, he just, well, the interpreting teacher, what is interesting about him, this is a guy that came from Macau. So he was the son of a Chinese with Japanese. So very interesting background. And when he went to Brazil, of course, being from China and someone that was studying Russian and philology in university, and he went in the 60s, he became immediately the target for the dictatorship. So he had this amazing life. And he came to the UK and was one of the first interpreters in the EU, worked in the Nuremberg trials, that sort of thing. So a very interesting person. And when he passed away, it was the second time that I saw someone do what my father did. When my father passed away, a few years later, I was talking with one of my brothers, and I saw that he had a photo of my father that none of us had. And then he just told me and said, well, I didn't want to show any of you this photo because my father, you know that my father liked me more than all of you, and I didn't want you to feel bad. And then it was quite interesting because some of my other siblings, don't forget that we are 10 siblings in total.
Wow.
And all the others actually made a comment to me. My father he was a widow when he married my mom. The first two children, they still believe that my father loved them more than he loved us. But all my other siblings, at one point or another of their lives, I am the second eldest, they came to me and said exactly the same thing. I feel a bit bad for you because my father liked me more than he liked you. So I thought that was quite impressive, how my father lied to all of us. Of course, I never told my brothers and sisters that actually I know that my father loved me most because he showed me several things that he never showed to the others. So here I come to the UK. Years later, I meet this teacher that became a friend. You know, we traveled together. He came to my house, and then he died. And you know, and he just decided that he had cancer, and he decided that he didn't want any of his friends around. So none of us knew that he was ill. And when we found out, he was already like in the last few weeks, and he died. And then we just tried to find his friends. We knew that he knew a lot of people. So I just put a note in Facebook, and some colleagues from universities that we worked in common. And then like and we didn't have a proper service. No one organized anything. So I just said, well, let's just say any goodbye that we want to Nakano. That was his name. And then all these people came, and all of them were saying, you know, I know. We had about 50 people there. And then all of them were saying the same thing. I know that you love Nakano, but Nakano was my best friend. You know, I know that he had other friends, but I know that I was special because of this. And then we had all these people, you know, I'm talking about 20 people went there to say why Nakano was so special for them, and how Nakano was more of their friend than all of us that were there. And I thought that that was amazing, how some people can leave that impression to others, that they were, you know, you are unique in my life. So it did inspire me with my father, but it when I saw that repeated with someone that came into my life, I thought that it was amazing. If you die and then you leave people with the impression that you were so special to them that you think that you are better to them than all the others, this is a good thing to leave. So yeah, I think that legacy is that, you know, somehow become special for some people, and do something so you that other peoples will hold that as an example for their lives.
It's wonderful. As you were saying that, well, not lots of things that struck me, but probably about 3/4 of the way through, that Maya Angelou quote came to my mind, and which I'm probably going to slightly misquote, but you know, people forget what you did, what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. You know, and so what you were talking about was the power of that, isn't it? How is it? Because I was also wondering as you were speaking, well, what is it that we're talking about when we're talking about legacy? Is it the property that somebody leaves? Is it the money that somebody leaves? Is it something that they've built? Is it a monument? Is it something they've written, they've done some music, or whatever it might well be? Or is it something far more subtle than that? And as you were speaking, I was thinking, no, it's something that's far more subtle. I mean, it could be anything, but often it's something that's very, 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 very subtle. And I wonder, I mean, I'm tempted to ask you, I'm tempted to invite you all, perhaps maybe in 2 groups, to have a conversation. I'm going to invite you to have a conversation, and you can have a private conversation because I'm going to be the only one here left in the main room. But I think I'm going to invite you to have a conversation, maybe actually in 2s. I want you to have a conversation about what's the legacy that you want to leave.
What about Robin? We didn't hear.
Oh, Robin, Robin, is there anything you want to say at this point, my friend?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear, my friend.
Yeah. Thanks for the mention, Lee. I don't know. I used to just think of it like as a past thing. It's intriguing to me that, like, to hear that sometimes it's a present and a future thing. I didn't really give it that kind of train of thought before, and I agree with what Frank said as well, that it's the perspective of how you approach it. So for me, it was what you left behind, and again, how you made people feel in that time that you left behind. So yeah, and again, I'm still learning about it, so that's why I feel like I don't have much to say just yet.
Wonderful, yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's absolutely fascinating. One thing that jumps out to me, it almost seems to have a fluidity about it. I mean, here's the thing, because as we've been talking and I was hearing you all talk, one thing that strikes me is that legacy, okay, clearly in some ways, as one of the things I'd said earlier, there's this sense of our history and the people who've been significant in our lives, be it family members or others, be it our own personal history or a longer sense of history. But it's interesting also, but it is this, and somebody made that point, past, present, and future. There is that thing about, you've got this very present sense of, okay, where am I at right now in my life? What are the things I'm wanting to kind of do? And then, okay, then what things do I want to do kind of in the future? But the thing that jumps out to me at the moment is almost that there's something, it can sometimes seem fluid. You know, what is really important to me? What is this thing that I'm wanting to do or be involved in or to shape in some way? I don't know if anyone else resonates with that, that sometimes it can kind of shift and change. There can be subtleties about what it is that is very, very, very important. It makes me think again of the thing that they were saying here at G about all of these people who all said about both of these characters, oh my God, no, they were my favorite. They know they like me most. Maybe that there's an understanding that what's important at that moment, I think that many people who do have a big impact, they are very aware of this moment. They're aware of previous moments. They're aware of future moments. They often have got a very, very good awareness of these things. One of the things I want to invite you to just have a bit of a chat with, perhaps in random groups, which would you like, a random 3 or a random 2?
Oh,
Random 3.
Random 3. Okay, I'm going to send you into random 3. And if you'll just share, I mean, you might not even know what you're going to say. Might not even know what you're going to say. What do you want? What do you want your legacy to be? Is the question. You might not even know what you're going to say. What do you want your legacy to be? And you can interpret that however you want. Your rooms, my friends, are now officially open. This is going to be very exciting. So yeah, you should hopefully have a button to be able to click on to join your room. And if not, we'll have to have a master group here. Oh, you know, Lee and Iris seem to be able to join. Are you able to join? Let's see. Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. So there we have it. I seem to have frozen here, so I don't know what that means. This is very, very bizarre to me. So our friends have all gone into their one-to-one sessions, and well, not their one-to-ones, their group sessions. They're having a conversation about what legacy means to them, and it's going to be just so interesting what kind of emerges. Oh, here comes Lee. Welcome back, Lee. Did it kick you out of your room? I can get you to unmute. Oh, if you want to unmute.
I was in the room and then suddenly I disappeared. It took me a while to get in there, but I don't mind. I'm happy to be in a room with you. Yeah, how are you?
I'm very, very, very well. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So we're here still broadcasting, but I was just, it's an interesting one, this thing about legacy and what one wants to leave. It's funny, I'm aware that I posed this question, but I think if I were to reflect on it for myself, and I wonder if you might have a similar view to me, Lee, my focus is, and you said something about this before, it's about the present. So whilst, yes, legacy, of course it has that impact in the future, but actually it's about the present. And I think there's a quote of mine which says something like, it goes something like, you know, the legacy is not what is there when you've passed and gone, but it's here what you give, do, and create today that happens to live on. So actually that focusing on it as their thing is a slightly misleading. It's actually very much an alive now thing. What plants am I seeding? What seeds am I planting today? You know, what is I'm doing now? It's a very, very alive thing for me, and I'd love to know your thoughts.
Well, that's the quote that we have on those bags when we do the Soul Trader retreat. That's the quote of yours that I chose. That was so powerful, because I think it's something that, you know, like people always think, oh, what do you, you know, this idea of what do you leave behind, or if you were some great, you know, inventor or philosopher or something, then you leave behind this amazing legacy. But it is very much about what you're doing now. And I think it's also very much, you know, it doesn't have to be this grand thing. It can be something that's, you know, even in small little steps, in small things where you're making an impact on somebody's life, or influencing them right now, or something that I mean, I was just thinking about, you know, we love Nelson Mandela, but you know, just think about how many people he's influenced, and he never met any of those people. You know, he doesn't know about us having this conversation about him right now, you know, randomly. So there's that kind of impact that you could be having. I know, you know, just for myself, some of the things that I've noticed over the past few months with people being online is how people notice whatever you're doing. And you know, me too, I notice so many things that people are doing, and I don't necessarily let them know, or, you know, do something about that. But people still have an impact on you, you know, without even realizing. So I think it doesn't always have to be this grandiose thing. It can be everyday things.
I think it's a very powerful point, because often we think about that legacy. It'll be interesting to pick up with it when everyone else joins us in a couple of minutes. But I mean, that strikes me because often we think of legacy in a very conscious way. There's a conscious act. Okay, I'm doing this, I'm leaving this, I'm creating this, we're building that. And it ties with something that Frank highlighted when he was having that conversation with his son. But here's the other side of it. Here's what I observe. Here's my take on what this thing is, isn't it? So again, it would be interesting, the other's take on, you think it's about this, but actually it's about that. I mean, it comes up a lot, fun enough, in coaching where, you know, you say coaching is this, but to the client, actually it's often about this, this, and this. So it is very interesting, that, and those subtleties. And it's funny, we talk about Mandela, but I don't know if you've ever seen the film Invictus, which is a film, it's a beautiful film. It's a really beautiful film, isn't it? And I think one of the things that strikes me most, actually, that it captures beautifully, is the very everyday way in which Mandela would just know people, connect with them, and make them feel very, very special. That, for me, that was the lesson for me. That was what was so profound. Just this, the personability, that skill, that quality is very, very profound. And it's interesting, as you say, we often don't think of those kind of things as legacy, but often it is. And again, it ties in with that Maya Angelou quote. I'm going to begin to close people's breakout rooms. But really, it's really, really interesting. Really, it's a really, really fascinating one. But I think it's, you know, Lee, the other thing that jumps out to me is, I think it's a valuable one for people to have conversations about, because I think what it can do is make people perhaps a little bit more intentional in a good way about what it is that they're doing. Everyone's coming back. So we've got Frank and Iris. Were you both in the same breakout?
Yes.
So you've already finished. You're back. You've done. The others are going to be back in about 27 seconds. Lee and I were just having an interesting conversation about some of the subtle things around a legacy. I'm really, I can't wait to hear what you're all saying in your subgroups. If any of it can be shared. And I'm still reflecting on what you were saying, Frank, about that thing about the perspective. It can be different from one person's perspective to the other person's perspective. Welcome back, one and all. I think Robin's had to leave us. He might be able to rejoin us kind of later. So I'm curious, Frank and Iris G, anything that you're wanting to share? You don't have to go, of course, into details of things that, but anything that you want to just share that struck you from your
happy to. I'll give Iris the mic in a second. I started off by saying it very much depends on where you feel that you are in terms of your career and work life. So, for example, as I said, when I was younger, legacy wasn't even on my radar. You know, I wasn't interested. But as I get to the point where I'm thinking of retirement and moving on, I'm now thinking of a legacy in terms of what do I hand down, what tools do I give those that come behind me, so they don't have to make the same, so they don't have to have the same fights and battles that we've had to have.
I think that's so powerful. And I think that, I think you just sum up so much there, Frank, in that, because it's so true, isn't it? The same thing for me, I think, earlier on in career. I didn't think about it. Like Robin said, the word just probably didn't mean anything, didn't resonate with me, but now you're conscious of it. Iris, do you anything you wanted to add to that from that in that conversation there with Frank?
I think that me and Frank, we agree that it's a similar thing. The only thing that I was adding is just like, as a young person, of course, I never thought about legacy. And I had all these plans and people that inspired me to get where I am. And with the curveball that I had to deal in my life, now I think about legacy and I just think, well, I want to leave to others. I want to inspire others to go beyond what they think that they can go, because most of the things in my life, it was people that, a lot of people told me, oh, you could do that. And then I just had a go. And I had a lot of people say, you are never going to be successful in that. And then I think, well, of course, professionally, I could do a lot more than I am doing at the moment. But then, I had a curveball. I have to decide, do I want to carry on life in that path, or do I want to stop and just enjoy life? And then, I think that in terms of legacy, now I think in the next generation, I say, well, if I can inspire others to love education and the possibilities that education open up in your life, like I was inspired from a young age, and inspire others, like some people, that told me, oh, you cannot do that because you're born in the countryside or because you are indigenous, blah, blah, blah. And then I could do everything that I wanted, and most of the things, I think. So if I can inspire others just to see beyond the limitations that, society put on them, I think that, is a good legacy. So it's also about the new generation.
Magical. I really like that. I like all those things that you were saying about those things, how you'd inspire people with education. But I also love that subtle theme that you mentioned there. That sometimes there can be this pressure, can't there, with legacy? It's got to be this. But actually, maybe right now it's about that. Maybe it's not about. I think that's something powerful about that. You were in with Iris K. Who wants to? Mia, do you want to kick us off? Oh, you're just on mute, Mia.
I talked about what legacy means to me and the fact that I will take time out of my day to speak to random strangers for 5-10 minutes, because it's a way of connecting with people and making an impact. But more importantly, it's because it's what's needed. I
like that. I think there's something very powerful about that. You've reminded me of a quote that I'd heard only recently. I think it was and I only heard it through, I know Lee and I both listened to Jack Cornfield's podcast. Jack Cornfield, kind of wise.
Wiser than you?
Yeah, a wise Western Buddhist kind of sage, speaker, teacher. And he quotes, I think some other Teresa quote, he says, and I think it goes something like this: your problem is that just simply that you draw your family circle too small. And that's profound. When I heard that quote is profound. And that ties in with what you were saying, Mia, that thing about talking just those random strangers, that there's something powerful in that, isn't there? Because often we think of legacy, it's very deliberate. It's my family, I'm leaving this to my family or my nearest and dearest, or to this cause that I care about. But what about those things that we might want to leave to everybody or share with everybody? I think there's something beautiful about that, and Mia. Iris K, anything you wanting to share from your conversation with Mia? Well, you're just on mute. You and Henry are just on mute.
Trying to control all the pets here. So the interesting thing is that we're both not having children. So I suppose legacy has quite a different perspective, when you don't have a family to leave anything behind to. And I think we were both on the same wavelength there to say it's the little acts of kindness every day. So it doesn't have to be like the massive thing that you leave behind, but actually just being the light every day somehow, because you don't know, when you meet people, when you walk the dog or something, you just don't know what their day has been, and how even a smile, a quick chat can influence their day.
I love that. I love this theme that's coming through. And I think, again, it's interesting, I could turn to Lee, because I think our conversation was on similar lines, wasn't it, about this thing about I think you made the point about these small acts and so on. Over to you, Lee.
Well, I think I was just saying that, I don't think that legacy has to be, it is such a huge and quite a profound word. And I think it can be so inspirational for many people to have that. Many people need that as like something, okay, you're leaving this legacy behind. But I think, as Iris was saying, also these day-to-day acts of kindness, it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. It can be this grandiose, why not? But it can also be these little things of inspiration and encouragement and support every single day of letting that be the legacy, because whatever you sharing with someone else, they're taking that forward and sharing that with others. So then that becomes the legacy. It's like that circle just expands more and more and more.
It's really interesting what you're saying, because I think it's funny, just this morning I've been putting together a presentation. I'm running a masterclass series with the Coaching Academy, who I trained with as a coach. And it's interesting if I think about it, because I can remember really clearly very early on in my career when I began this particular kind of journey, and I'm putting together this series of masterclasses with another of their highly experienced coaches. And whenever I'm in a room training coaches, there's a particular kind of an affinity, because there's something about knowing that journey that they're on. And I was just putting together this PowerPoint with all these tools that I've developed over many, many years. And I was thinking, my goodness, this is quite rich with all of this kind of stuff over quite a long period of time. But I'm like, there's something quite nice about being able to present, ties with something that Frank said. Lots of things that I guess for us have taken a lot of pain and tears or sweat or work to do, but being able to say to people, I'd look out for this and so on. In fact, Robin and I were just having a conversation before today's session. I said, if I was giving advice to my younger self, there are a few things that I would, picking up from the last session, that I would say, that would be really, really valuable, X, Y, and Z. I think there's something very powerful about that, passing things on. The last thing I want to kind of throw out just before I just throw it out again is that I wonder if only would have this conversation about legacy a bit more often. I wonder if it might make people a little bit more intentional about what they're doing today. I mean, if we take an area like politics and leadership, isn't it? It's often now we want to win power and do this and so on. But often we're not thinking about, well, hang on a minute, what is that legacy wanting to leave the country? Where is it that we're going? What is it we're trying to achieve here? How is it we want things to live? I mean, we've got a legacy issue, I guess, right now as a species, isn't it? Is there going to be anything? I mean, let's go there. Is there going to be anything left to leave anybody, planet-wise and all the rest? Do you think that I wonder, do you feel as a species we've lost touch with that broader legacy, and it tends to be too insular? Me, my family, the people who I care about. Anyone got any thoughts about that? Do we draw our family circle too small? Mia Morris, you always have so much wisdom to share. I mean, maybe I'm turning to you also, because it was interesting, the thing that also that Iris G was saying about education. I wish for education. You, from a very early age, I get the feeling that education and sharing and this sense of sharing history and legacy was something that you're passionate about. So I wonder, do you feel that we're a bit too, I don't know, maybe the word selfish is a bit too harsh, but we don't look broad enough when we think about our impact and sharing? Anything you want to say about that?
If there are any positives to come out of COVID, is the fact that people have got time to reflect and think, and really think deeply about how they're interacting with the world and the difference they can really make.
Absolutely. I think that's really, really true. Frank?
I lost my train of thought then. I just was looking at a message.
Maybe this link, well, just to warm you up with this thing, Frank, I mean, again, you were saying before that you were at that point thinking, I know, well, you've got technically, I'm sure you've only got 20 years technically to retirement. It must be an early retirement you're thinking of, but no, but
I wish.
but I just wondered, do you have this, I wonder what your thoughts are. Do we, because I get the feeling that also you're somebody who very much cares about the group far more than from just being what I can gain in my own career. Do you feel that we do draw that family circle too small, and that we don't think broadly enough about the impact that we're having on far more broadly? Do you think that we're too narrow-minded?
There's no doubt about it in my mind. I have one of the conversations I have with colleagues is that I give the example that we've all got family all across the world that we've never met, but by dint of the fact that they're our family, they are within that inner circle. Whereas you could sit and work with somebody literally right next door, literally next to you on a desk, or pre-COVID anyway, and you wouldn't give them the time of day. So you're not really you're not invested. You don't care about them to the same extent as you would care about another apparent stranger, who's a stranger, but your family.
Yeah. It's quite powerful. And you just made me, I just had just even thinking about kind of organizations. I just found myself thinking about organizations, and when, somebody will leave, and often we don't even think about, well, what are we passing the knowledge on? There's that thing about people talking about all the knowledge leaving the organization. Do we even really care about that? Or we're so short-termist? Anything any views that you have on this, Lee? Again, it's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things that you're wanting to do, now we talk about legacy, is your retreat center that Justin yourself have started. And you've got a strong sense of the kind of things you're wanting to do community-wise. Do you feel that we are just too like that, or too afraid, or too preoccupied to really care more broadly?
Definitely. I think with, just to kind of bring it back to a spiritual point also, in the Buddhist teachings, it's always about, you consider every person. I think many people have this naturally, but some people need to cultivate this kind of attitude of everybody is seen as your mother or your someone dear to you. There's no discrimination, there's no differentiation. And I think, apart from any kind of spiritual context, just to bring it into a very pragmatic kind of way, if we see that every single human being, wants to be happy and wants to be at ease, then it changes your perspective. It doesn't mean that you're stuck there in that thing of just always looking out for yourself. You're thinking, okay, well, if you want this to be happy, then someone else probably also wants to be happy in that kind of way. So even just that little shift sometimes can change your view profoundly. If you're going into a supermarket and you're annoyed with somebody who's doing whatever, especially in COVID, such a lot of tension comes up. But if you're thinking, okay, well, this person also, maybe this person's in a rush, maybe this person has issues at home, maybe this person is sick, then it changes your perspective of how you consider that person, and then everything shifts. So I think, just that kind of awareness and coming back to humanity, just that basic humanity.
I like that, because as you were speaking, one of the things that jumped out at me is that whilst we can often start thinking, particularly often in the West, about legacy as me, my will, the things, have I got anything to leave? When we think about legacy in that far broader context, it's about the whole planet, isn't it? What planet, it's that saying that people say about, leaving the planet in a better state than you leave it. And that's something really powerful about that. Iris K, anything you wanting to add about this thing about legacy? And it's quite interesting that we'll come to, as we begin to head toward a wrap up, because it's interesting that with somebody who's worked a lot with lots of charities, that I guess is, that are wanting to improve our world and so on. I'd love to know your perspective personally and from what you've seen and professionally. And are we, again, too limited in our take on this thing about legacy, or how we see ourselves and our contribution?
I actually think that there is a lot of love and compassion in people. And it's easy to focus on the negative examples and lose that perspective. And in a way, the news nurture that, isn't it? That there's this constant focus on drama and war. But I think that as humans, we are very compassionate. There are a few very ignorant and selfish people, of course, as well. They're just at a different level of maturity on their journey, I suppose.
I like what you're saying there, because it is that reminder, isn't it? I think there's that kind of reminder, isn't it, that that we have that, and we have that huge capacity for kindness. Again, it makes me think about that thing you were saying, Mia, about, you know, we would just talk to people on the road, or those, and again, what you were saying, Leah, those really small, what they say, those small acts of kindness, that talking to somebody, that moment here, that can be just so rich, that has quite an impact. And if I think about some things that had the biggest impact on my life, they've often been a phrase that somebody said here or there, or a bit of wisdom that struck me. So this stuff can be very, very profound. And it just makes me think of that thing about that saying that I've mentioned maybe a few times here, can you find the room in your heart? And so I think that's one of the things I want to kind of, as we go into maybe the last wrap up, maybe ask everyone to leave us with maybe a sentence that perhaps you might want to leave as a legacy for anyone who's watching this. But for me, one of the things is that thing about, that struck me recently, is that saying, is the room in your heart? And I think the thing that I would invite people is to, I think you were saying, Leah, something like along the lines of, for me, it's something about almost like foresting that room in the heart, almost creating, you know, just tending that room in the heart. Because if we can make the heart space greater, if we can become more open-minded and open-hearted, so I love that open-hearted, so powerful, then there is far more room to hold somebody else when they're struggling. Offer something. You know, last thing I want to offer is this thing about, you know, compassion, like wisdom. The more you share, the more you give, the more it is. Those are the two things that the deeper, you know, the deeper you go, the more you share, the deeper they become. Let's have a last phrase from everyone, last word of wisdom. Where shall we start? Let's start, actually, Iris, I'm going to start with you. Do you want to offer us a closing thought? Anything you want to offer for anyone who's perhaps been watching this compassion check-in and is thinking about legacy, or anything you just want to share from your life journey and your life wisdom?
Yeah, I think that what we said earlier on, that it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's small acts of kindness can have a huge impact, and it's like a drip effect that maybe not to worry about the one big massive thing to leave behind. Wonderful.
Who do you want to pass the legacy baton to?
Frank.
Thank you. In fact, I'm glad you passed the baton on to me, because I was going to dovetail on the back of your words. I'm always reminded of the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. And that's how I try to look at it, because sometimes there's unintentional consequences. And that's why, for me, first do no harm, you know, resonates and means a lot for me. So it's about trying to make sure that, you know, you do leave the planet and leave a lasting impression, which is a positive impression rather than a negative impression.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. You're going to pass the legacy baton to?
I'm going to pass the baton on to Lee.
I definitely think also, you know, with the small act, but I'm kind of going to swing it around and also say that it's also, one should never underestimate your capacity to be able to do good. You know, just in the past few months of working with some amazing women that have come together, and just seeing their capacity and how they always, you know, taking their own standards to another level. I think as human beings, we have infinite potential, and that can be in a humble way, not in a kind of arrogant way, you know, of being proud about that, but really don't underestimate oneself. I think we can do so much good, and that little bit of kindness, that little smile, or that little thing can have a massive impact on someone.
So I'd like to hear you invite Mia. Speaking of powerful women, so that's you both pass on the baton. I'm going to like for you to invite Mia to share her words of wisdom.
Please, Mia, please share it with us. We love listening to you.
There are so many quotes I could think of, but the main one is the Maya Angelou one, isn't it? After the storm, there's a rainbow. And just to say that tomorrow will be better, and you are enough. How about that?
Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. Now, I just want to thank you all. I think it's been really wonderful. I think there's been something really wonderfully rich about this compassion check, and they all have their different thing, but there's something really warm and encouraging about this one. And I think there's something I maybe want to close with, picking up on what you were saying there, Iris, that very often we can focus on what's not right or what we think needs to be solved, or the difficulties and everything, or things can, as Lee was touching on, things seem so overwhelming or daunting. But I think there's something about just showing up and just singing your song, you know, that I think is very, very powerful. Somebody asked me the other day, you know, what would I say? Oh, I think it was in this session. What did I say to younger self? It was just like shine, just show up, just sing your song, do what you can. You know, do what you can, but what you might be amazed, like as Lou was saying, what you can do, it might be quite significant, and yeah, really, really powerful. So I just want to thank you all so much for today. I've really, really enjoyed today. You've now earned your lunch. It's a shame we can't provide everyone with a free lunch here at Compassion Check-In. And
I don't know about that, Rash. Uber Eats, they deliver.
yeah, we should do.
Madrid,
or other food companies other food delivery companies are available. And we might possibly be here next week. Would anyone like to suggest a topic? A topic that anyone would like to put on the table? Is there something maybe dear to your heart, a topic that you feel that we've not touched on that would be nice to be discussed?
Acceptance.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Acceptance. Is everyone happy to go with that? I love that.
More than happy.
Yeah, acceptance. Okay, so goodbye, everybody, and let's wave goodbye to everyone who's watching and wishing them well.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good
Bye,
week.
everyone. Okay.